Hello everyone, and welcome to our new live webcast, Protecting Node.js-based JavaScript Applications. Join us each month for new powerful messages, technical tips, and success stories that will leave you inspired and ready to get your protection, licensing, and security techniques another step closer to perfection. At WIBU-SYSTEMS, we empower software publishers and intelligent device manufacturers with cutting-edge technologies, new business models, and tailor-made consulting training. Let us help you upgrade, optimize, and automate your entire license lifecycle management so you can focus on monetizing your business at a higher level. My name is Daniela Previtali, Global Marketing Director of WIBU-SYSTEMS, and I'm delighted to have you here with us today. We are joined by Matthias Honka, Product Management, and Axel Engelmann, Architect Protection Technologies, both from the headquarters of WIBU-SYSTEMS. Over time, JavaScript has matured to a language of choice for desktop and server applications. While server applications were safe and sound in their making's own data center, now they are let out into the wild, and JavaScript's very nature makes it easy for skilled attackers to remove or get around license checks. Unless you add X-Protector JavaScript, which has been mainly designed for Node.js-based use cases and made to guarantee top protection by encrypting the executable code and optionally integrating license checks right in the application itself. Some housekeeping we need to take care of before we start. For everyone who's joining us today, I want to remind you that we will be reserving some time at the end of the session for Q&A, and I'd like to invite you to submit any question you have in the live chat box. This session is being recorded, and a link to the replay will be posted directly to you in the next couple of days. And don't forget, stay with us throughout the live session for your chance to win 4 hours of free CAD-meter consultation from the most brilliant minds at our company. At the end of the webinar, a new tab in your browser with 3 simple quiz questions will show up. You should submit multiple choices for each question. We will draw the winner from among those who reply correctly and notify them at the time of the replay announcement. Without further ado, I'll pass things over to Matthias. The floor is yours.
Hello, and a warm welcome to everybody. My name is Matthias Honka. I'm sitting here with Axel Engelmann.
Yeah, also a warm welcome from my side.
A special welcome to new customers who are not familiar with our protection suite. I want to start with a brief look around to the protection suite and CodeMeter license server, just to give all new people to CodeMeter a brief overview where is X-Protector located in our protection suite. And I want to start with our basic principles. What we offer is a solution that allows you to integrate a protection into your software just once and deliver it to many different customers. And each of those customers may or even get different kind of licenses. So you can deliver yearly licenses to one customer and perpetual licenses to another. The protection is easily integratable in your build processes, in your development processes, and how to work with in development will be shown in the demo afterwards. Our basic approach is protect once, deliver often. Protection and licensing are separated into 2 parts, and you may deliver the protected software and the license in different ways. So we have 3 columns on which our protection solution is based on. We have X-Protector. Today we will present X-Protector JavaScript to protect software by encryption and to protect it from reverse engineering, but also to protect license check usage and license to protect the license usage. We have the license server that is delivered with the license, together with the license usually, and that is a software that runs side by side with your protected software, and it keeps track on the usage of the license and protects it from overusage and checks expiry times, usage counters, and everything like that. We also have the License Central. That is a product that helps you to deploy licenses and protected software. And usually software or usually licenses are delivered in 3 different containers. We have the classical dongle. Today, often this is in a USB device, and where the license is protected in a hardware container, which is the most secure way up to now. We have also cloud containers, you see on the right. That is basically an internet-based container that can be used for user-bound licenses. The user has to be online to use such a container. And we have the software-based licenses in an encrypted file that are in a special way protected also from copying. If you want to provide protected software to your users, you have to protect your software. That's the way how to do this will be shown afterwards. And you have to create a license for this customer, and you deliver both as a bundle. It's up to you which kind of container you want to use. And if the bundle has arrived at the customer, he may use the software. If he, for example, if he uses a floating network license, the license may be hosted on in a container addressed by a license server that is located in a local network, and each instance of the protected application may contact the license server for using a license for some time. So we are offering a broad range of different license types. So as I mentioned already, single user licenses that are bound to named users. We are offering floating network licenses. That means there's a number of licenses that can be used at the same time concurrently. For example, 10 licenses at the same time, but used by many more users at different times. This is a typical case for a license server in an intranet. We have subscription licenses. That means yearly or monthly update is required. We offer trial licenses. That means a user can use a software for a specific time and then has to upgrade to a paid license. And of course, we have the option to modularize the license of a software package. So sub-packages or sub-functions can be licensed individually. So that is the basic flight above app protector, license server, and license delivery. So let's start with the in-depth demonstration of how to protect JavaScript software.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias, giving us a quick introduction of the AX Protector suite and the options we have. So let's start with our newly developed product, AX Protector JavaScript. And at first, I want to speak about the Electron framework and Node.js and all the things. I guess all attendees here are already familiar with Node.js and Electron. because in that regard, you are the experts. We have our qualities more on the security side, but I want to first start what Electron is in case you don't know it. So Electron is a very popular framework for desktop apps. Since JavaScript became more popular for whole application and backend development, the foundation for desktop apps was found with the Chromium framework and Node.js as a runtime for JavaScript on desktop apps or on desktop systems. So you may know VS Code, WhatsApp, MS Teams, Twitch, etc. All apps kind of seem like a native application as you are used to, like Word or Excel. But in the end, it's all based on JavaScript business logic combined with some native libraries, but all the main code is written in JavaScript, and it's really easy to develop such applications with a high-level language like JavaScript. So this application, in that regard, the Electron application, is mainly distributed as a native executable package. So as you know, your usual program ends with an .exe. You can double-click and it runs, as you would expect. And what you as a customer of WIBU could do, since you know for my native applications, I use the AX Protector native, and your goal is that you want to protect your intellectual property, you invested in the software and also license some features. You simply use the AX Protector native, and then that's it. This would be a valid approach, but is it really a useful or successful approach to meet your goal, protecting the intellectual property? And this is what we want right now to go a little bit more deeper. So I prepared an example where I show you how a typical Electron application looks like. So I have here a project called VCP, which is basically a Corona status view, I would say. You can get the application from GitHub. It's in the top left. And you see it's an overview of how the Corona disease develops in various countries. When we look for Germany, for instance, we see our total cases, and also from yesterday we got 54,000 new cases. So it's a typical application which shows us some content. And here I told you we have our exe file. It's working all as we expected. So now we want to protect it. So I prepared a little script, and here you see I called AX Protector native with the IP protection mode, since I only want to protect intellectual property at this point. And let's see, that is encrypts the file. So now it's encrypted, and we go into it. I rename it that I don't have the original running. So now I copy the protected one, and as you see, it's also a little bit more bigger. That means that it's processed by the AX Protector, and the AX Protector engine is also added to the binary. What's now important is that I cannot directly execute the exe via a double click, because the AX Protector native embeds a technique which changes the executable segment. And all Electron applications are running sandboxed. So what we have to do is to disable the sandbox. And Electron provides there a parameter --no-sandbox, which disables the sandbox and allows us to do the modifications during runtime. So we start our application with no sandbox, and we see it behaves exactly the same. So I can still search for Germany. It shows the same values. So all good? Actually not. because what we now protected was the runner, but your real application is located deep inside the whole package. In that case, it's in resources, app, and then we see here's a source folder which contains JavaScript source code. And as you see, you would expect that it's protected, but it's actually not, because the X protector native only protects native applications and not JavaScript scripts. And here you see we have also the real meat of the application is in some files which are named weirdly, but you can trust me that this is the core of the application where all the logic is, and this is plainly visible to an attacker. So do we protect the intellectual property with X protector native for Electron applications? No. But how is it with licensing? I have chosen IP protection, but I can show you the example also why an CodeMaker license wouldn't be sufficient to have enough security. As you know, an Electron application consists of various node modules, and also the actual runner, here in that case the VCP, is also a node module. So what an attacker would do, he would get the Electron runner via the npm installer. In that case, I know it's 10.1.6, and it's also visible inside our package.json, inside the package. And I can download only the Electron runner in a separate folder. I prepared this for you. It's in the Electron folder. Here I have all the node modules needed for the Electron runner. And here I go into Electron, distribution, and here I see an Electron exe, and this is freely available on the internet. So I copy simply this exe file, go into my Electron project, I remove the original one, and as you remember, this was the protected one. I remove the protected one, rename the executable, which I got from the internet, to VCP, started, and now the application works again. So even if you would protect the original VCP runner and with any option of the X protector native, an attacker could simply replace it with the same version he can find on the internet. So what does it mean? In general, it means X protector is not, X protector native is not the right tool protecting Electron applications. The reason for that are Electron exe is a generic runner. So it's kind of an execution environment used where your JavaScript is interpreted, etc. And also it contains interface logic for the Chromium. So it's not really your application core. It's a generic software which is contained in every node on every Electron application. And your own developed source code is located in a subfolder in that package. And it's plain JavaScript code with no protection at all when you run X protector native over it. And also, the protected Electron exe can be exchanged simply with an unprotected one. So all your licensing part is also removed then. So you have to keep in mind that this is a real pit-hole to think I have an exe and I can use the X protector native. No, it's simply not the right tool. And this is why we at WIBU came up with a more specialized technology, the X protector JavaScript. And to recap how a JavaScript is written, I have a little graphic here. We have our JavaScript editor with a simple, where I can write a simple JavaScript code, for example, in that case, hello world, with some number. And we have our Node.js runtime. And I deploy my JavaScript file as a simple text file. with no copy protection and no IP protection at all as a usual developer. So the source code is visible to all your competitors, attackers, and so on. And it's also not licensed. So how do you use the AX Protector JavaScript in this regard? It's mainly a component in between. So you have your plain source file, which is protected via a protection specification. And you see on the right side is then the encrypted and scrambled JavaScript code. And here you see the function call, in that case the hello, is still there, but the function content is not visible. It's hidden inside the AXE_data object. And what's important for AX Protector JavaScript is that it operates on function level. So each function is encrypted separately. With our state-of-the-art protection technology and also used security, we use AES 256, which is the, for symmetric encryption, the state-of-the-art crypto scheme. You may question, what is about the platform independence? And I have to say the script itself is platform independent. So you encrypt it once and then it can run anywhere. But there's a little but in that sentence. Since the execution itself depends on our newly developed Modulo Protection suite runtime. This is a library which we employ our whole licensing schemes and anti-tamper mechanisms. And this is available for the major platforms, Windows, Linux, and macOS. We have also later on a little chart where you can see more in depth where it's possible to use it. And this library has to be present that the JavaScript can be run in the Node.js runtime. The good thing is, if you encrypt your script today and a platform is not available, you don't need to encrypt the script again when a new platform arises on the market. Since we only need to provide a separate Modulo Protection suite runtime that your application can run. So you don't need to re-encrypt it, you can still use it and only need a new runtime for it. But I don't want to talk anymore about some high-level things. Let's go right into the code, and I want to show you from basics to define an Electron application on how the AX Protector JavaScript works. So let's dive in our used Windows 10 environment. We talked about the basics, so let's start basic. I want to first show you what my application looks like I want to encrypt. So it's a very simple JavaScript code, maybe not the best on the market, but it's enough for demonstration here. So I have some input values, it's A and B, and I have an input if I want to sum these values or I want to multiply the values. And therefore I have also two functions which do the job. So now I want to encrypt this file. What do I need to do? First I need to also specify the protection options in the so-called YAML file. And this is something you could be familiar if you already used our new AX Protector Python, because it's exactly the same. The only difference is that the input is now the JavaScript file instead of the Python file, but the rest is exactly the same. So we have our licenses. In that case, we have a CodeMeter license 6.010, product code 13, and we have our license lists. In that case, only license list 0, which means we want to encrypt the whole application. And encrypt the whole application means all functions inside the application. The output folder, in that case, is prod, so our artifact should reside in there at the end. How do I call the encryption? As your application runs in a Node environment, it may be logically that also the AX Protector JavaScript is running in a Node environment. And that's also the case. We have our Node executable, then we have our JavaScript AX Protector, and we have our protection specification .YAML. So let's quickly encrypt the file. And we see the artifact resides in prod. So before I start the application, I want to show you the actual content. So when you jump in the middle, you see, that's all plain code. Did you do anything? Yeah, since your real application resides in the big area at the start, the AXE data object. But now you may question, why is it so big? The original application was kind of small. And this one is, yeah, it's really large, you see? And it's not only your application, which is inside this object, it's also all the keys which we are generated and encrypted and certificates where the data which was encrypted is also signed. So you get also integrity protection with AX Protector JavaScript. In the middle, there's our AX Engine runtime, which contains generic code to operate with the CPSRT DLL and also find it in the system. And the real application from before is located here. So you still see that there's some read line and some simple test application and input values. But then function 1 is hidden under that construct. And you may ask yourself, yeah, here's an eval. Do they simply put the source code in there and then run it? No, it's only, the eval is only used to get the JavaScript scope into our CPSRT. So your source code doesn't get right into this function. It's all processed inside the CPSRT. Okay, so without further ado, I think I should first start the unprotected application and we see how the application behaves, and then we start the protected application and then compare the results. So first, let's execute the unprotected application, and I type in 4 and 6, and we want a sum, and this is 10. It seems logically correct. So then we have 8 and 2, and we do a multiplication, and it's 16. So this seems reasonable. So now let's look how our protected application is performing. I know that it's under prod, so I call node prod test.js. So now if I'm a simple value, I have 5. Oh, now I get a license error. But this is legit because when we look into the code meter CC, we see 6,010,13 no license was, or no CM container was found containing the license. So this shows us that the protection works, since your code cannot be executed without having the correct license. So let's program it. Sandbox PGM 6,010,000 and P13, since we need that license. So now I get a log that we see a little bit more in detail what's going on. So this time I want to import 30, and you see it's already processing further. And we want a sum 33, right? So another one with the multiplication, we make 20 and 4, and we want a multiply, and it's 80. So the application behaves correctly in the protected way. Matthias mentioned before that we also offer IP protection without licensing, and this is also something we support with the Unprotected JavaScript. And what you have to do is fairly simple. As you remember, in our protection specification, we have CodeMeter license with 6,010,000 and 13. And this can be simply exchanged with IP protection. And that means that we don't have any license bound to the application. It's solely obfuscation-like protection. So let's see, we encrypt the application. But now it's throwing an error. But it tells you exactly what the reason is. So license of firm code option providing necessary certificates is required for using IP protection. And I told you before that we sign the code or sign the data which we put into the protected application. And since we heavily rely on security and also certificate chains, we somehow need someone who can create certificates, so a certificate authority. And this is something which we embed in our universal firm code infrastructure. And therefore, we also need to provide a universal firm code which is used to create and sign the certificates. So all you have to do is put inside the options the licensor firm code, which is used to generate the certificate. But this is not needed during runtime. This is really important. And this would be also your firm code and shouldn't be the test kit, because when you use the test kit, then an attacker could also create a certificate for it, and you couldn't distinguish if it's really coming for you or not. So now I provided the 6,010,000 in that case, since we are in a test environment. And now we encrypt again. And we see that it's working perfectly. But it also tells you that in IP protection, you have to deploy the CPSRT DLL on your own. And why is that? Yeah, it's mainly because you don't rely on a license, and in that case on CodeMeter. And usually the CPSRT DLL is distributed via the CodeMeter runtime installer. But when you have your application solely protected with IP protection, you can assume that on your customer machine is the CodeMeter runtime installed. So what you have to do is you put the CPSRT besides your application, and then it's all running fine. Okay, I think we should go on and have a little look at the modular licensing, because currently we only licensed the whole program. I have a little idea now what I forgot. You may also question that you saw this content in the protected file, but actually this is also your could be your application code, which is potentially some IP you want to protect. So how do you do that? As you know, Unprotected JavaScript works on function level. So the simplest form would be to wrap it inside a function. I call it main. And then I call it. And make it a little bit more beautiful. Now we encrypt it again. And what I now do is I look into it and go at the end. And now you see all the code is gone from the original one, where simple test application and input values was visible, is now not there anymore. So this is something you can do with code in the global scope. You put it inside a function and then it's protected also. Okay, now this was all for the basic sample. Now we go on to the modular protection. And for that, we have a simple application. And I run it first, that you see what it is doing. But somehow my VM isn't responding. And in every demo, there's something which goes wrong. So we simply start the system again. And then we see how it's going on.
Hopefully it will be quick.
So what you will see is that it's also an application which is based on JavaScript, but it's a little bit more complex with an UI. And there we will show you how you can protect individual functions with an additional firm code or product code. And we'll also show you how to deal with errors. So that was quick. So we go into it and run it. Run. I only want to check that I have all the donglets there. All right. So now you see, as promised, you see the calculator, a little bit more fancy than my demo before. But in the end, it can also do a multiplication and a little bit more. Okay, you see, it's running fine. So how is it structured? I know that in the application, the whole content is in the API folder. So we have here our roots.js where some code is resided. And the main logic is in the controllers where we have our meat of the application. And what I wanted to pinpoint is this code. It's mainly that we want to get the right operation for the stuff we clicked in the calculator. So like, do we want an addition, a subtraction, multiplication, or division? And I've chosen a separate function for this because I want to license this differently. And what you also see, I've put a try catch around all the stuff in case something goes wrong during execution of the function. And if something goes wrong, I mean especially with decryption. So how do I protect this project? It's also done via a YAML file. And here you see it's a little bit more complex. Now we have two licenses. The first one should look familiar. It's our 6.10.13. Second one is now a different product code. And the license list does also contain now two entries instead of one. And this is basically the license list 1, which refers to the CM license with the 9214 product code. And in our last section, we have a protection area where we can specify how we want to protect individual functions and classes. In that case, we want to license the getOperation function to license list 1. So let's run our AX Protector. But I have to first rename also the API folder since the YAML had it in its input. It's encrypt. And what I also can tell you is that we now don't have .js as an input. We have a folder. And that means that the AX Protector JavaScript goes recursively inside that folder and searches for all JavaScript files which are contained in there and protects it with the same licenses and also specification. So this is why now all files inside it are protected. We can verify with roots. Here you see var AX engine, so you know it's protected. And it's a little bit different to the protection before, because now we have the AX engine part in a separate file, where all your application code is contained in this object. So we don't duplicate all the code again and again. Here you see now it's only the AX engine object which is searched inside the Node environment, and then we have only the functions which are really inside the original one, but in that case now it's the protected version. So let's see if it's running correctly. So I have it run, and we can look in our CodeMeter CC, and we see it allocated license 6,010,13, because this was our base protection of the application. Let's look at it if it's working. I can click, it's all fine. Now I want to do the addition. So now I have to, somehow it's popping up. Now it's working. Now I have our error code. I can open it again in the original code. So as you remember, we wanted to give the result 1337 if something goes wrong, and also we log an error. And here we see I clicked twice on the equals. That's why we have two entries. It doesn't find the license 9213, and if I click again, you see it's going on and on. So let's simply program that license. We use CM Vox PDM with 6,010,000 and P9214, and we program it into our dongle. So let's see if it's now working. 9 plus 6 is 15. And if we look into our CodeMeter CC, we see that now the license is found. So what did we saw now? You can protect individual functions with a different license, and as soon as this license is available, the application is working as expected. Okay, so what's missing now? Yeah, the real thing is the Electron app, which wasn't really protected with the X-Protector native, but can it now be protected with X-Protector JavaScript? And of course it can. And this is now also done with the protection YAML. And I want to have a really basic protection, so I use my beloved CodeMeter 6,010,13 license. But now I target the resources applications folder, because this is the stuff where all the JavaScript sources reside. And what we have to do here is also we have to delete the source folder, because if you only would protect the build, then you still would deploy some JavaScript sources which aren't needed for the application, but could hint an attacker for some insights in your application. So we delete it. And in our resources folder, we pinpoint the aspect of JavaScript to the app. So let's do it. Electron and encrypt, and I make it in a separate command line, because then I can also explain you a little bit why some things happen. So this takes now a little bit longer. And why is that? I told you before that the X-Protector JavaScript goes recursively into the folders. And in the app folder, we have our Node modules folder. And every experienced Node.js developer knows the dependency help. And if you look into it, these are many, many modules the X-Protector JavaScript tries to parse and encrypt. The main thing is that the build folder should be encrypted. And we see it's done. So the Electron.js is encrypted, and also the application source, which is inside JS. And as you remember, this was before plain. And now you see all the things here are encrypted via X-Protector JavaScript. So we don't have any plain JavaScript code anymore, which is in a function. But the real question is, does it work? And therefore, first I clear the code method log. Now I start our VCP exe, and you see I start the application with a double click and not via the -- no sandbox option. And this is also a benefit, because now the application executes in a protected manner inside a sandbox environment. So you gain the security from the Electron framework that no one can escape from a web application in the host system, but your code is still protected. And you see we can type in Germany, and it's all there. And also in our code meta CC, we see that there is an access to the license which we specified. So, and what we have now is a protected Electron application you can deploy safely to your customers without any fear that code could leak to attackers or competitors. And you can license it individually to your needs. You only need to specify the functions in the YAML file, which you know that are new applications, and can assign different licenses. And then we are good to go. So let's go back to the presentation. Oops, and see what we covered now. At first, we encrypted a simple application with a code meta license and then with an IP protection license. And I also showed to you how to protect the global functions. And this was basically done that you shift the code inside a new function and then call it. What we also covered with the calculator example in the browser, with the modular licensing, so that you can license individual functions to different license lists. And I also showed to you how you can catch errors via exception handling blocks. Then I showed you how you can restart Windows, but that's now forgotten. And I showed to you how to protect an Electron application with the X-Protector JavaScript. And it's as easy as it can be. Simply writing your YAML file, specifying your functions and your licenses, and then protect the root folder where all the JavaScript code is located, and then X-Protector JavaScript does all the magic. And what I also told you are the requirements for the CPSRT, that you need to deploy it when you're on IP protection mode on your own, and when you have a licensed mode, like when you use CodeMeter, then it's automatically deployed via the CodeMeter runtime installer. Okay, so now let's go on.
maybe we make just a short break
Yeah.
for a question. There's someone who wants to have some more information about the relation between product codes and license lists.
Oh yeah. So maybe I go back into the demo so that I can have something to show. We had our calculator. There was so the product code and the firm code belongs always to a license. So this CM license or license, let's say 00, I can also license 1 and typo and license 2. So these are different licenses which can be stored inside the dongle. They don't have to be there at the same time. So you can either have license 1 or license 2 in the same dongle. It can be multiple dongles. And each license list can contain various licenses. So license 1 can be in license list 0, and license 2 can be in license list 2. Or 1 in that case. What's also possible is that you can put multiple licenses into one license list. So it's basically a container of licenses where a function refers to. So now with license list 1, I always need license 2. So a function can only refer to license lists, and license lists only refer to licenses. And there I can build up whole protection variations. So let's say we have also a third license, which uses a different protection, a different firm code, like this. Then I can say the get operation function is accessible if I have either license 2 or license 3. So it's basically a container of licenses. This is the relation from license lists to licenses. And every function inside a JavaScript file can be assigned to one license list. And the relation of the licenses inside the license list is one of them needs to be available, not any of them. I hope it's a little bit more clear now. Maybe you can give us some feedback. In the meantime, I go on. So the X-Protector JavaScript offers the known high security from our other products, also now in the JavaScript ecosystem. And what do I mean with that is, as I told you, the AS256 is the highest possible security which we offer. And it's strong for many, many, many more years to come. As you saw, the integration of the architecture JavaScript is very, very simple. You simply need to create a YAML file where you place your configuration and your licenses, and then you execute the JavaScript X-Protector, and then your application is encrypted and maybe also licensed. Depends on your needs. You saw that we have a very easy implementation to implement modular licensing with the protection area at the end of the license scheme. And every element there uses the same cryptography, so the same cryptography standard, to say. And what I also have to tell you in that regard is that if you don't want to protect all functions, only various ones, then you don't place a license list 0 in your file. You only make license lists above 0, and then all functions stay plain except the ones you specified on your own. The biggest part of the new ASP.NET JavaScript is the fact that it relies on the principles of the already released ASP.NET Python and shares the same internals. Most of them it shares. So the CPSRT is our core component for all licensing, anti-tamper techniques, and it's proven it is safe till now, and we also think that this was a good foundation to use for ASP.NET JavaScript, since it also means that new features come really quick also in the various products. So now,
so just a moment, we have another question.
Then
more technically, does it work with native ES modules? For example, export function, foo, brackets, return. I do not quite understand it.
We internally, the JavaScript code is executed as before, so I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work. If the native module, or if you mean that if you can encrypt the native module, then I would suggest you for native applications to use the ASP.NET Native. But if you mean the interface part, I would say it's working as expected, and if it's not, then you file a bug report and we take care of it.
One new question. It's related to the fact that the Node ecosystem is moving from require to import export. Okay, this seems to be.
I think we should clarify this in a more one-to-one talk. It's not something for this webinar, since it's going a little bit deep.
Also, I see the explanation of relation of product codes and license list has been cleared.
Okay. Then let's go on. Matthias, maybe you can talk about the platform support of the CPSRT.
Yes. As we learned, protected JavaScript applications need a special library to run on specific platforms. While you need to protect your code only once, you need to provide different CPSRT libraries for different target platforms. So here you have an overview on the supported platforms. And what you can see that the development kit is only available for Windows, Mac OS, currently only for x86. And it's available for Linux as well as x86 and glibc library. Many more target platforms will be provided with our next release of Unprotected in December this year. The target platforms that we will add are Linux ARM, HF, and ARC64. For those platforms, there will be no development kit. And what you can see also, we will use a new license model for Unprotected. So you can get a basic license for automatic protection and most often protection functions. If you want to use modular licensing, that means licensing different licenses for different parts of your software packages. If you want to use IP protection only or code moving, which is a very special feature, then you need to purchase additional licenses, which are add-ons to the basic license that is always needed. This new license model will be provided for all of flavors of protection suite we have currently. So not only, this does not apply only to Unprotected JavaScript, but also to the native protectors and the protectors for .NET and Java. So, just a short overview on the SKUs. If you want to purchase Unprotected JavaScript, you see the new license model. The basic license it's a subscription license just for 1 year, and you renew it every year. We provide test licenses that are valid for 60 days, so you can test our product and decide on whether it's worth for you. So, as I think we have one thing, an outlook. What will we do with Unprotected JavaScript in the future? It looks like it is not much, but it's challenging. So protecting JavaScript in browsers is really complicated, and we are still doing research on this, but we hope we can provide support on this part. And what we will do as well, not in the first step, but we will provide our protection API that is available for Python and for native application for JavaScript as well. So on these topics we are working on. And so I think we have shown everything we wanted to show for today. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, also thank you from my side. It was a pleasure to show it to you. And I would say, take care and goodbye.
Goodbye.